Hey, good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock, so let's get started. My name is Apurva Misra, and today we are going to be talking about from coders to conductors, how we are all thriving in the age of AI-augmented engineering, or not thriving. Again, like I'm a machine learning engineer. My background is in like AI and machine learning. I've been in this field for around 10 years now. I'm an AI consultant as well, so I have my own company. I consult independently for startups and mid-sized companies, and I do work a lot with software engineers because of that reason from like different domains. And I'm a public speaker, and that's why I'm here at this conference. And also, I've started going to the gym because we don't know when we are going to lose our jobs. But anyway. In this presentation, it took me a while to, make this presentation because it's like a very, very big topic and it's changing very quickly. Every day there is a release which happens and like it changes how we work as software engineers. So what we will cover in this presentation is basically like go over what is hype, what is not hyped, what are different companies doing and what the future looks like, So it might look very messy in the beginning, but we'll come to a conclusion at the very end because we are trying to cover like different case studies from different companies. So yeah, let's get started. So this is, you guys would know them already, Anthropic and OpenAI CEOs. So this is a statement that they had said, and this is March 2025. And we are almost there, actually. So, but this was said like long back. But we are there. Anthropic's code, like 80% of the code right now is written by Claude, according to them. So before we like get going, how many of you are software engineers? And how many of you are using AI assistive tools? Cool. And when was the last time you wrote a line of code? Yeah, exactly, right? Like I was thinking about it when I was working on this presentation. I was like, I haven't written a code for a long while. I can say like 100% of my code is written by AI right now. Unless like you are an enterprise company and you have like proprietary stuff, which these AI models are not trained on, you might be using it pretty much for everything. So it's not really that hyped, especially for software engineering. But also, something to remember is these companies are IPOing this year. So a lot of it, like whatever they put out, is to like get their share prices higher. And also the price of the models, and they're increasing the price. First of all, they're making all the enterprises use their API pricing, which is higher than the subscription, because subscriptions are subsidized. And they're increasing the prices of the APIs as well. So it's going to get expensive, and that might affect how much AI gets used, especially with enterprises, if you're a software engineer working in an enterprise. So something to remember. And also, as the new models come out, what they are making sure is they use more tokens. And that costs. So yeah, they are really good, but they train it in such a way, like if you just use Claude Code, do you see like every time it does a task, it'll come back and ask you a question because it wants the conversation to keep going. It wants to use more tokens, And the other thing to remember is it's not profitable. None of these companies are profitable. This is a website, you should check it out. It's pretty good. Like once you open the website, it's a counter going on in like the past 5 seconds, what happened, how much money did they lose. So none of these companies are profitable. There's a lot of money that's going in. So there might be a bubble. I had a podcast at one point. I was speaking to a person from a finance field, and that person was like, this is a bubble, because like all of these companies are investing in each other. So what I'm like, this is unrelated to this conversation, but like it might affect how the AI tools get used, because the pricing, it does affect the pricing, right? Okay, so vibe coding started, like the term vibe coding was invented by Andre Karpathy. This is one of his tweets explaining what vibe coding is. But what happened in these past couple of years since this term got invented by him, what they meant to say was vibe coding is when you're not looking at the code and you're using it, and people who are not technical can do it, and they are not really creating a production-ready code base. So they decided we're going to name agentic engineering to what engineers are doing with these AI-assisted tools. We're actually looking at the code, we're structuring it, blah, blah. So that's agentic engineering. But what happened over these years is like these two got merged. So everybody calls it vibe coding now, and nobody's really looking at the code. So But the thing to remember is like software engineering is not just coding. There are a lot of other things that are involved in software engineering. Coding is just one of the things that software engineers do. And what has happened with AI is we don't have to do that piece. So AI tools are doing the building stuff, that is writing the code, but your need is shifted towards the edges, if that makes sense. So you are doing more of the planning, the design, you're doing the deployment part, how to, like which cloud, what technology, what to use. You're deciding that piece. So that has changed as we're using more of AI. The other piece to remember is also communication. You as a human being is communicating a lot more with like the C-suite, the product design team, the product managers, all of that. So you are like communicating. So I can be very sure about this. Like everybody has like one meeting a day in your company, and like companies actually advertise that they don't have meetings on Fridays. So like everybody has meetings every day. So you're talking to other humans, right? And that is like humans from like different domains, and you are able to put that stuff together to figure out what you're supposed to build, how you're supposed to build it, what is needed in the company, what's going to get ROI. So communication is a very big piece of what a software engineer does. But what these companies and what everybody wants is, like we use these AI tools, we generate like good quality code, and that goes into the training data, and these AI tools get better. So there's like a flywheel that they're expecting is going to happen. And let's see like how that's going to happen. But like before we get into like the techniques that different companies are using, there is some like basic stuff to remember. When you're using these LLMs, because we're using natural language, you have to be very, very specific about what you need, because miscommunication happens between humans. So it's very easy to happen between a machine and a human, you know? So like be very specific about what you need. The other thing is comprehension, because these models or these AI tools can generate so much code that if you remember in the beginning, like the question was, how are we going to review it? Like it makes a PR with like 1,000 lines of code changes. How are you going to review it? And now we have code reviewing tools as well. I think when Claude released it, it was like $25 per review, and it was like very expensive. But now everybody, like every company released it, and it's like simpler to like you using an open source model as well if you need it. So I can pretty much say a lot of people are not reviewing the code anymore as well. So this was something to remember, because as a human being, you cannot comprehend so much stuff that the LLM is changing. So you need to bring AI in for reviewing as well. The other thing is probabilistic. So these models, like if you ask it to do something now, and if I ask it to do something tomorrow, the answer is going to change. They are just inherently probabilistic. This is not going to change. There is a paper, if you guys are interested, like it's OpenAI's ex-CEO, Meera Murthy. Her company released the paper in which basically, because the hardware inherently is probabilistic, the GPUs, like this is not going to change. Like it would give you a different answer if you ask the same query again. The next thing to remember is these systems are not safe. If you make these three things happen in your AI system, it might lead to something, some sort of like unsafe situation, basically. Like if you give it access to private data, like if you're giving it access to SQL, DB, whatever, and if you're giving it the ability to externally communicate, and you're giving it access to untrusted content. So like if you have a customer support bot or anything, any user input is unsafe content, right? And you're letting it communicate with the user and also giving access to private data. And you would have seen these situations happen a number of times recently with their AI stuff. So if these three things happen together, it's a very unsafe situation. And it's not just like LLMs, like text models, it's audio models as well. They figured like you can actually hack them as well. So they're sending an audio which is not legible to us, but the agent got hacked. So this is from a paper. So what I'm saying is, like, if these three things are happening, you shouldn't. Like, try to make sure only 2 of these are happening, not the third one, so that your system is safe. OK, so just like these were the basics about what AI is and how you should be careful about it when you're using it. But like, let's go into the techniques. So this is from a paper in which they actually looked into how like 24 engineers, like really good software engineers, I think from Google mostly, were using AI-assistive tools. And they weren't engineers who were just like trying to figure it out. They were like pros at like using those AI engineering tools. And they were trying to figure out like from all the different tasks that a software engineer does, how many of those were taken over by AI? And this is what it looks like. Like operations, coding mostly, planning, even planning could be taken. So I showed you the graph earlier. So I'm just showing like how much of that could also be taken over by AI. This talk might get very pessimistic, like most of the stuff could be done by AI in the future, and that's what it's looking like, but we'll explore what the future looks like later. This is from, have you guys heard of Gastown? Okay, so this is a blog post you should check out. It's called Gastown. So there's this guy, he was telling what is happening right now and what might the future look like. So you're using, for example, you're using an AI-assisted tools in your IDE. So you might be having your Visual Studio Code, you might be using Cursor. You have the chat sidebar, and then what the person was saying was, over time, what you might have multiple IDs open. Then what you might have is like you're using it from the terminal. Then you have like multiple terminals open. And then what might happen is like one terminal is controlling other terminals, but basically like one agent is controlling all the other agents. So like there's orchestration happening, and you're just giving it the input. So in Gastown, like he created like a town in which there is this one leader who would come and talk to him. Otherwise, he'll go control all the other different like functionalities in that town. So it was just an analogy, but that's what he was explaining. And I think we are pretty much here. We are pretty much here. So what needs to change in an organization is like when you're moving from AI assistive, like you using this in the IDE or you using this in the terminal, to like an AI first organization, you need to change the system how you usually used to work, because the agent would be doing most of the stuff. You need to build the harness around it so that it can do that stuff. Because that's why we covered like what are the issues with these AI models when you're working with them, right? You need to make sure the system around it is such that it's able to work. So like human in the loop, and then like you giving it the agency to like work on most of the stuff, and you are just giving inputs. So what is happening right now? Like from what you're doing right now, you are moving to a higher level. And we'll explore that a bit more. But like, because of that, a lot of the roles are also changing. You would have seen that happening if you look at any, like if you guys are looking for a job, if you might have seen that in the job descriptions as well. All these different roles are getting merged together. It's like a spectrum. They were like separated, but now they're getting merged together. Like a software engineer is expected to be like doing the PM stuff, doing a little bit more of the design stuff. Like back-end engineering and front-end engineering is not really, like you can do front-end as well now. So this is what is happening. And the other thing also is, because it's like, what I was saying, it's not the same as before. It doesn't take so long. So what used to happen is there used to be like a 2-month design sprint, They will design something, then like the engineering team would build something, and it used to take a long time. But now what's happening is the build part is so quick that in companies what is happening is like the ratio of PMs to engineer is like 1-to-1. Like some of these companies are trying to do that. Some of these companies are saying we don't even need PMs anymore. So I cannot give you like one correct answer, but I'm saying like this is what is happening around, and this is what is changing. And the roles are changing as well. A PM is expected to do more. The PM is expected to code, The same goes for QA as well. The QA's work, a lot of it is getting automated as well. So the software engineers are expected to QA. So the roles are changing. Then the other thing is like, because we were talking about how you have to be very specific when you're talking to these LLMs, because the memory piece is still not figured out. The research is happening. We haven't figured out memory. You would have experienced this as well. It doesn't remember properly. It doesn't remember the right things. You need to have a mono repo instead of multiple repos, which is so funny. Like in earlier times, before AI came into the picture, we used to have like more organized stuff, and what they're saying now is like you combine everything and put it together so that the AI can actually parse through it better. So that's one of the things that's changing. The other thing is like building the harness. I think I mentioned this before as well. So because of how these AI models work and how they access stuff, if you build like the correct harness around it, like it has access to the right tools to be able to do its job, and you're giving it a structured flow, it would be able to do it better. Does it make sense? So anyway, like if we talk about AI agents, if it's not related to coding as well, AI agent is basically a model, the brain, plus the harness. And harness is like any tools that you're giving it access to, and like any structure or the limitation or guardrails you're putting. Like you cannot do write in the DB, you can only read from the DB. So that's what builds an agent. And in this case, like this is what it looks like for the coding case. This is a blog post from OpenAI. What they were experimenting with is basically they wanted to build a project with no human written line of code. Okay, they were using codecs, and the humans would just provide like inputs or guardrails and stuff, but the codecs agent would only write the code. No human would write the code. So what they realized was it was important initially in the beginning itself to give it as much observability as possible. Because think about it, like if you take an LLM or a brain and you give it a task, it will do the task, and if it did it wrong, it would not know that, unless you give it the tools that it can maybe run the code and figure out from the compiler there are issues and then go fix it. So it's like you give it the tools so that it can get the feedback to actually fix itself. And that's when you like make the loop happen, The other one is, have you heard of Ralph Wiggum loop? This is from the paper. It's pretty popular now. So again, going back to the looping, it's basically like you give it a goal. You give a goal to the agent and let the agent be. And if you provided the right tools and the right observability tools, it'll keep working on it till it figures the goal and it satisfies your needs. So that's what the loop is. And how it does is like sub-agents and orchestration. That's what the image is like implying. OK, so once you have like the loop and everything set up, there would still be issues because human process is very, like we are not used to working with AI agents. We are figuring this out in real time, right? We do a lot of communication in person. We do a lot of communication through like video calls. We do a lot of communication through like documentation and also through like Slack messages, There's like a lot, our communication, what I'm saying is very dispersed through like different channels and also in person. And what happens is, this AI agent, if it's like working on your code base, it doesn't have access to all of this communication. Maybe in the stand-up today morning, you guys decided you're going to use PyTest for the testing and not something else. So it doesn't have access to that. So what is needed is to combine the AI process and the human process. AI needs to have access to all of that context. And in that example, like going back to what OpenAI was doing, they were also explaining that like it doesn't have access to it, so they had to encode that separately and give it to the model. So they were like using an embedding vector DB and encoding that and giving to the model. But what that needs is, as a human, we come back and do the documentation, which everybody hates doing, and it's time-consuming, and it's like long-term ROI on that. Like the agent would get access to that context to be able to do the job. But Claude released this day before yesterday, and it's basically you being able to tag Claude and Claude having access to all the conversations on Slack. So what they're saying is we made Claude asynchronous and readily available all the time. So you don't need to have the audio. I'm just gonna play the video a little bit. But basically, if someone is asking a question, they can just tag Claude. So what I'm saying is this was a problem, and Claude just released something to fix this, especially for Slack. And Claude has access to the code repo. It can like go make the changes. It can understand the context, whatever is happening on Slack. And what they were saying was also, you can have different Claude for different channels. For example, if there's the legal conversation going on between the lawyers, it wouldn't have access to the code base. So it makes sure like it has access to the right tools, So I'm saying it like it's changing. So I was updating the presentation like till today morning. But anyway, so the problem also is like we were talking about this, right? Because LLMs need the context. Also, they have limitation in the context window. You just don't throw everything together. Break it down. And also, do you guys know about skills? Skills on Claude? skills. So it's just a way of like progressive disclosure. So what they're saying is like if you have agents.md file or claude.md file, like you can use it as skills as well. Instead of putting everything that you need or require from the coding agent, like I just want every file to be 300 lines of code, I want the logs to be structured this way. You put that in an index and then like let it explore based on whatever it's doing. If it's going to write test cases, it'll go look at the test case instructions, you know? And also, like, don't try to give it like too big a task. Just like be in the Goldilocks zone. That's what the slide is saying. If the task is too big, these agents are still, because the memory is still not a solved problem. They're still not there to be able to solve that, but they might get there. The other thing also is like, as these agents, like based on the OpenAI example, like what they're expecting is going to happen is the agent would have its own loop, and it would keep running, and you just give it the task, it'll be able to like make the whole code base, review it, test it, put it in production. What will happen because of that is it would make sure the repository is customized for the agent instead of the human. So it wouldn't be like how we used to add comments. If you have noticed recently with how these AI-assisted tools are adding comments, the comments are very, very detailed. We don't do that as humans. But like the way they would write the code, and sometimes they repeat functions, by the way. They're not like define a function at one place and like use that everywhere. They keep repeating functions. So there's a lot of like, there's a lot of AI-generated mess also happening in the code repo. But like, because the AI agents are the only ones working on it, it'll be easier for them to parse, because it's the same brain like parsing it as well. We are not, the humans are not involved at all. So the repository structure would change over time. And it also like, as a human, when we need to give it instructions, we would use progressive disclosure. And like going back, because the repository would be customized to the AI agent, it'll be easier for them to localize stuff. So localization is also a big problem in the research industry. Like when you give the coding agent instruction to do something, it has to go find the right function. It has to like go through the code repo and look for like different files and stuff. So that's what localization, what I mean by localization. And that would become easier because the agent is the one writing the whole code base, you know, and working on the code base. With these AI models, like just like going back to the basics, AI models are basically trained on a lot of data. In this case, what is happening is, like, you would have noticed this as well. These models work better with some languages because it was repeated multiple times in their training data versus the new languages or the new libraries. So it's better to use them with the older ones. The other thing is, like, instead of using, if a new library comes out, instead of using the new library, if it's small enough, you can just make it write your own library, you know? So that is also happening. People just writing, if it's a smaller library, they just write it themselves instead of using like a new library and explaining that to the agent, because it doesn't have it in the training data. The next thing is, because I was saying it generates a lot of slop. This is from the Codex example. What they were saying was they have this, they have like smaller agents, and at a certain cadence, they come and clean up the slop created by the big agentic system. So there could be that as well, like a collection of agents which come and like clean up the system. If there are repeated functions, clean that up, all of that. The next thing is, this is also from the OpenAI example. What they had is like one thing is you giving instructions to the AI agent in natural language, right? That would be agents.md file, claude.md file, whatever. The other thing also could be like when it makes the changes, you check that. So you can define your own custom linters, which could check like for this file, it should not be importing from these 5 files, you know? And then you can have like structural tests, like these files should only be created inside this assets folder, this file should be created inside that folder. And then you can have test invariants, which test like if the file has only 300 lines of code, and if the logs were structured in a certain way. So you can define these different structured checks along with the natural language check for it to behave a certain way. Because honestly, like, still it's an issue. Claude has that issue. Claude ignores its claude.md file, doesn't listen to it at times. So there are different tools which help enforce that. But this is another way of enforcing that, you know? Also, the issue with AI agents is laziness. So what I mean by laziness is if you give it, like, I was talking about how you should not give it a very big task, because what happens is, like, if it's a long-running task, over time, it's like, I think I'm done with this task. And it'll just say like, even if it's like partially done with it, it'll say I'm done with the task. Also what happens is goal drift. So if you give it a certain goal, because it's been working on this for like really long time, because the memory, and everything goes in the context, right? As it's working on it for a longer time, it forgets what the actual goal was and it'll start working on something else. That's what I mean by goal drift. And for that, what Anthropic has introduced is it's called ultra code. And you can use it by just saying ultra code in your prompts. But basically what they mean is like these are dynamic workflows that happen in the background. So if a task could be done, like this is what a structured harness looks like, you know, do step A, then do step B, then do step C. In a dynamic workflow, you give it the task, you tell it, you say ultra code, and it'll figure out what the flow should look like, and it'll change for like every different kinds of tasks. It figures out itself what the code should look like. And just a caveat, it uses a lot of tokens. So these are like different flows they were talking about in their paper, what they released about the ultra code. But just to give an example, for example, like why you would need it. So if you're parsing, for example, 1,000 documents, you wouldn't want to give 1,000 documents to one agent because that's like a lot of context in the context window. It would forget, it would not understand, it would ignore stuff, you know. Then what can happen is if you put ultra code, what it'll do is it'll create a lot of sub-agents and it'll make it like, make one agent work on only 2 documents and then it can do a comparison. So if you're doing a sorting over those documents, it can work like that, you know. So it would structure it in such a way that it takes the context into account. It figures out how many sub-agents, what should they be specialized on, and like arrange them in like certain order based on what the task is. Okay, so I said this like multiple times already. Memory is still not a figured out problem with these agents. We are still working on this, and it's not a solved problem. So if you have heard of OpenClaw, or if you have heard of Hermes agent, these agents, how they keep memory is basically based on its dated memory. So if I spoke to my OpenClaw today, it would save Apurva, today's date, and blah, blah, whatever Apurva said. And it'll update the long-term memory as well. So it has dated memories and it has long-term memories. But we are still figuring it out. Like, how do we like break down memories? How do we update them? How do we consolidate them? Because maybe Apurva likes strawberries today and she likes cherries tomorrow. So like, it needs to update that long-term memory, you know? The other piece is also agent-to-agent communication. So for example, you might have, it's not just software engineering. You might have an agent who's a PM agent. You might have a SRE agent. And they need to talk to each other. So how would the communication, they need to be isolated enough that they know this is their task, this is the instructions, this is what they're specialized on. But they should be able to communicate with each other because they should know they're part of this particular company and they're building towards the same goal, you know? The ROI for the company or the money for the company. But this is what the overall system would look like if this happens, what OpenAI was saying. So you have the Codex agents working on the task completely independent of any other influence and being able to do the task. Humans would only influence it when it feels like it's getting stuck at something, and it'll come back to the human. And it'll have access to like the right tools to be able to do the whole flow end to end. And what will happen with, the only thing in this image is like there's so much happening, is like the number of people needed over time would reduce in companies as these AI agents become end to end. And let's go to the future now. Any questions till now? Okay, so this is my example. That's why the picture is ugly, because I created it. But basically, till now, what was happening was we were building the AI agent. We were giving it access to the tools, and we were looking at like what's happening. We used to. There was a point of time when these models had come out initially. I used to like stare at it. I will give it a task, and I'll read through like what it's doing, you know. And now in Claude, I just like dangerously skip permissions. So it will come back to me. So I'm a skill now. I'm a skill or I'm a tool available to it. And it's like I can go to the human and ask. So I'm not really important anymore. And I've accepted that. And this is from a paper in which they, like, I think I mentioned this paper before. Like, they were observing these engineers and how they are using the tools. What they noticed was, which I mentioned earlier as well, everyone's job role is expanding. You need to do more. The other thing is, if you are a software engineer, okay, that's your core, but you need to explore more into like the other spaces. You need to be better at design, you need to be better at speaking to the users, you need to be like doing a bit more of the PM role, because all of that is needed as inputs to these AI agents. Even if like you are using AI agents, they are doing more, but they would come back to you asking questions which might not just be software core engineering. And because we are the bottleneck here, because when it comes to you, it's expecting an instantaneous answer. You need to know stuff to be able to answer to the agent. So that's what they were talking about, like the T formation. You need to be more at the edges as well. And even if, like, obviously these agents can wait. If they come back to you, you can like answer on a Monday or like a Friday, whatever. You need to know stuff to be able to answer to the agent. You cannot just create like how it used to. What I'm saying is how these companies used to work before does not apply anymore. You just don't create a ticket and pass it to the PM team, and they will respond to it like in 1 month based on what their sprint is how their sprint is happening. That's not applicable anymore. So this is a recent blog post from Anthropic, and what they're covering here is if the person who is talking to the agent is more skilled or knows more about, so if a software engineer is talking about software engineering or making them do a task in software engineering, they're able to make it do more actions with their prompt. While someone who might be in the legal space might be, whatever prompt they give, like if they're building a website, if I'm asking it to build a website, it would be doing more with my prompt based on, compared to their prompt. Because maybe I'm using the terminologies that the agent understands. So this is what they observed. So what I'm saying is, like, having that knowledge is useful because you can instruct the agent better. The other thing of what they say is, the Claude shares of decisions, how that has changed. People decide what to do, Claude decides how to do it, and based on the share of sessions, you know, execution decisions and planning decisions, how that has improved over time. When people say you are the human decides and the agent does the work, what I'm saying is, over time what's happening is the agents are also taking the decisions. And we are needed less and less. And the kind of things we are needed in is not just our core engineering, also like the other domains, adjacent domains. This is from a paper by McKinsey. Oh, I did not tag it. But anyway, this is a paper from McKinsey. And what they were showing the future might look like is how, I think you might have heard this already. They talked about robots, and they were like factories with no lights, because robots don't need any light. They can work in the darkness. So that might happen with software engineering. Like, you give it a task in the evening by the end of your working day, and they work overnight, and they finish the task. Then you come back the next day, and then like you figure out what to give it, you know? So you are working, you're trying to figure out what needs to be built, and it's the one actually building. So software engineering in 2026 is looking like this. You're just saying yes or no to the agent, and that's about it. But like you saying yes and no, it needs knowledge to be able to say that, knowledge and experience, right? Anyway, this was my talk. I still want to talk about, we have time, we have 12 minutes. I still wonder this, even I'm wondering this, like, the primary objective of AI was to save human time, right? And then, like, Geoffrey Hinton comes in. Geoffrey Hinton is like the father of AI. He comes and says everyone should become a plumber now. This technology is very dangerous. And how much of this is hype or not? I've only seen companies which are going to make money out of it, say like 100% of our stuff. It's all end-to-end. It's just like startups who are working in the AI space, who are actually building agents. They are the ones selling those agents, and they're like, we are doing 100% of the coding with AI. Or it's like OpenAI, Anthropic, who are selling the AI models. So either it's like AI agents selling startups, or it's the AI model selling startups who are saying end-to-end systems, like everything is taken care by AI. And then when they say AGI is going to happen, honestly, these models, sometimes they make such stupid mistakes. I don't know if that's going to happen. And it might get a bit technical, but like how these AI models are trained, the underlying technology is transformers. And transformers is just like token-based technology. It's auto-regressive. It just works on tokens. It generates the next tokens. That's why they're not good at math. So unless they change the architecture of how these models are trained, that is not going to happen. Obviously, there's research being done, but that hasn't happened yet. So even if you increase the scale, when they talk about we need more GPUs, we need more data, data is like they're lacking data. That's why you keep seeing these advertisements on LinkedIn about, come give us training data, like you can earn $45 per hour giving us, if you're a software engineer, because they're running out of data. They don't have any data. They're now hiring people for $45 per hour to like get data from different domains. If you're a PhD, whatever, they're lacking data. The other thing also is, because of this hype, there are companies which are not hiring people. And if you're not hiring somebody right now, in the next 10 years, you wouldn't have those senior engineers because you never had junior engineers, you know? And these companies might be doing, because that's what the market expects. Anytime there's a layoff and the CEO says it's because of AI, like their stock prices go up. So I'm not sure like how that would look like, because maybe humans are needed and all of this is hype, and then we wouldn't have those senior engineers that were needed, and they needed those experiences, you know? And as these AI models, like I talked about this earlier as well, like if these AI models are the ones working on anything end to end for longer duration, like how that would look would change, right? Like if that's the one working on it all the time and there are no humans involved, how the architecture of the system changes over time, like nobody knows because we haven't done that for long enough. That's the same as like AirPods. Like we don't know how AirPods affect my eardrums. We will know after I die. Like our generation needs to suffer through it to like know how that changes, you know? Any questions, anything? You can connect with me here. Please vote. I know it was like all over the place, but like honestly, like I don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. There's so much happening. I just tried to like converge all of that into this talk, and that's why it was like all over the place. Any questions? Anything? Yes.
You mentioned that less people would be hired in companies. I see, for example, in the health sector that it's much more productive today. They have so many technologies, and despite that, more people are employed in the health sector. So I was wondering how you see, I'm curious, like how you see the software engineering sector. Will it follow that trend, more productivity, but much more demand from the...
Yeah, there's this school of thought as well. Like so earlier, code was expensive. Any line of code that you're creating was expensive because it needed effort. And now it's like, there's no value to it because AI can generate it so quickly. So because there's lesser value to it, people might need more of it. So more engineers would be hired. So that's another school of thought. With healthcare, what's happening is, because I would say it was a delayed industry. It was never that technology savvy or like technology first, which kind of makes sense, right? It's healthcare. Even like finance is one of those industries. They are reaching the stage where like they're trying to get more engineers to like make them technology first. And once that happens, I don't know how many engineers they would hire. But I don't know what's so I wonder there is hiring happening. It's just the news cycle is dominated by the layoffs that are happening, and they are just giving it the reason to be AI. Because they want their stock prices to go up. They just did like extra hiring during COVID, and they're getting rid of those people, honestly. Also, the other thing is New York recently introduced this regulation in which if you do a layoff, you have to give a reason why you're laying off, and none of the reason till now was given as AI. So when they make it legal, nobody says it's AI. Any other questions? Anything? I'll be here, so like, yeah.
You mentioned that you're a consultant for other companies. And, well, where are you seeing right now that most consultancy is going towards? Because you also need, like, you're basically searching for a job all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I have to do a lot of marketing for that.
Where do you see the shift there in the market for you, for example?
For me, I feel like I can do more projects because I I have, if you look at my Slack, my company Slack, I have 2 Hermes agents running there. One is for the outreach stuff. The other one is for just managing my social media stuff. So I can do more stuff because I can assign it to like different agents. I also have humans in my company, but I'm just saying like, some of that stuff is honestly like, all of that stuff that we were doing till now wasn't needed to be done. It was so repetitive and humans hated doing it. So it could be given to these agents. The other thing also is like, any coding stuff I'm working on, it's like I was saying, I haven't written a line of code. It becomes easier to work on that, like as a consultant, because you're working on like different domains and different tasks. It's like easier to comprehend that and work on that, because less of my brain goes into like the coding part and more into like what is happening, what we are doing. And so that's my personal experience. But honestly, if you look at the bigger consulting companies, they're actually making a lot of money, because this is the time they're making money, because nobody has figured out this technology yet. And these companies, Anthropic, OpenAI, they're hiring these consulting companies, McKinsey, TCS, all the different consulting companies, to push AI into other enterprises, like healthcare, anything, all the other enterprises, because they cannot do it themselves. They don't have the time for it. So they hire these consulting companies, and they're like, use OpenAI at this whatever rate, and like sell it to these other companies. So these consulting companies are getting like very good contracts now, because they are given money by these AI companies to sell it to. Yeah.
Do you see the risk that also consulting companies don't have at some point these lines, or this goes away?
Yeah. Initially, I thought consulting is going to end, because you don't need specialized. For example, okay, so I didn't tell, like, I'm from Vancouver, Canada, actually. So it's my first time in Munich. So I was like, oh, where can I travel to? You don't need travel agents anymore, because you can like, just talk to ChatGPT. Like, I'm there for like 4 hours. Just spin me an itinerary for those 4 hours in the city, So I was thinking about this like yesterday. Like, travel agents are not needed anymore. Like, anybody who's an expert in something that was like part of the training data for these AI models maybe is not needed anymore. But still, what is happening is you need the humans so that you can blame it on somebody. So if I had a travel agent and if my day did not go so well, I can like at least blame it on somebody and ask for refund. But that's my thought process. I'm not too sure. But yeah, even I thought so. Like, consultants wouldn't be needed anymore, but honestly, they're needed more. So maybe if I'm not saying software engineers are not, honestly, I feel they're needed. More software engineers might be needed as well, because more consultants are needed, because they were the first ones to go, honestly. So I keep talking to my partner. He has his own company as well. I'm like, have you seen anybody who got fired because of AI? Their whole role got replaced by AI, and that hasn't happened. Because a job role isn't just a very narrow task. It's like a lot of tasks. And I was talking about this earlier as well, right? Don't give them a broad task, because they are not yet there. So, and a job role is not a very narrow task. So it cannot completely be transferred to an AI agent. Yes?
In the European Union, we have a problem if your company and are being hacked. So you have to pay a fine in that case, and you have to prove that you did everything correctly, and still you got hacked. I didn't see you touching this topic. Do you have an opinion on that, how to handle that in the world of AI, and everything is written and I don't even look at the code, and so I see a problem here.
So they want you to prove that you did everything to not get hacked.
Yeah.
And what does that involve? Like compliancy and stuff?
Yeah, you have to prove like what open source libraries did you use, where did they hold, have like known CVEs or not, and stuff like that. So I see a problem here when everything is written by code and I don't even look at it.
Uh-huh. So I have seen startups come up which are like, how we make your AI code secure. I think they are solving that problem. So honestly, because we are generating so much code and a human cannot possibly review it, there would be solutions coming up just for that problem. Like, we make sure what they would do is, I'm pretty sure, like, they go through your imports and stuff, all the libraries, what versions. First of all, they'll make sure you've pinned the versions. Then they'll go check for the versions online and see like how they are doing. But also, I'm seeing a lot of stuff happening in the open source community. Like all of these, a lot of open source community leaders are like, I don't want any AI generated PR. So there's a lot of like stuff happening there. Some open source communities are okay with it. Some of them just hate AI-generated stuff because they are getting bombarded with PRs right now, and they don't have enough humans to review it. And they don't want to merge it without a human review. Yeah, open source community is suffering right now. It's suffering a lot because of like AI-generated content, because it's not good quality. Like, because anybody can like just spin up an AI agent to create a PR. It's not a very high-quality engineer doing it. So the PR turns out to be not that great. And then they have to review it to reject it. What you're saying about like how if you're using an open source library, like how can you trust an open source library anymore? So there would be, I am pretty sure there would be solutions. Because I have seen a startup like that, which is doing that. They make your AI code secure. But I didn't look into it, so I don't know what exactly they are doing to make it secure. But I'm pretty sure they'll come up with solutions for that too. Because a human cannot do that. Humans would not stop. I have seen it happening. We have stopped looking at the code. There was a time they were like, oh no, we will still look at the code. It has to be production quality. But I speak to engineers, they don't look at the code anymore. So it is happening already. So it's not like because there's a government regulation, they would start looking at a code. I'm pretty sure there would be like AI agents just for reviewing the code to make sure it's secure and compliant. I actually came across a startup yesterday, and they are building AI agents for marketing. And it's about, so I'm just saying how scalable this could be. They are making an AI agent for each of your customer, an AI agent for each of your customers. So if you have 1 million customers, they'll make 1 million AI agents, which will just like keep a track on this customer, where that customer clicks, when they open the email, how much they read, what their interests are, track them through their cookies and stuff, and then figure out what advertisements, how to update your website, like customize it for them. So what I'm saying is the scale has, that's why everybody is like looking for GPUs, because hardware cannot keep up with where the software is. Yeah. Okay, it's 9:46. You can connect with me. There is, if you scan this, there's a newsletter as well. So if you guys are getting overwhelmed by AI stuff, I publish a newsletter every week with whatever I find interesting, which I think might be relevant to you. So you can do that.